Have you ever been part of the way through mixing a song and felt frustrated that your mix lacks loudness, depth, dimension, or clarity? Then you go listen to some of your favorite mixes and you wonder how they achieve all of this, seemingly so easily. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you two approaches to setting up your mix bus, from easy to advanced, to help you start improving your mixes and sound something like this.
This is the beginning.
Well, if you're new to the channel, thanks so much for stopping by. My name's Christian Hale. I'm a producer-songwriter right here in Nashville, Tennessee. In addition to my music being streamed a whole bunch of times, it's also gone viral on social media and been licensed for TV and film by many of the world's leading brands and networks. On this channel, I'm here to help you do two things: make better music and make more money from your music. As we get into this, I have a free resource I want to give you that goes along with today's video called my Mix Bus Cheat Sheet. Go ahead and grab that down in the description below or over on my website. It takes this subject matter and goes even deeper, gives you a bunch of my favorite mix bus plugins, settings, and things to keep in mind. But without any further ado, let's get into it and start talking all things mix bus. All right, let's start by taking a look at method number one, the easy mix bus method. I want to mention that when I mix, I pretty much am always mixing through a mix bus chain, or if it's in the case of a song like this where I was the songwriter, producer, and mix engineer, usually part of the way through the production, as the production starts to take shape, that's when I'll start adding some mix bus sauce, because I do find in most cases that you do want to mix through a mix bus that gives your mix shape, vibe, and all of that, as opposed to mixing, then adding a whole bunch of stuff to the end and seeing it change your mix. So I do want to make a note of that this was mixed through a mix bus, but with that in mind, let me show you what a little bit of this mix sounds like without any mix bus processing, then we'll get into the easy method.
This is just the start. When beauty meets the mystery, I'll take every part. If this is the beginning, this is the
Yeah, so it sounds okay, but even if you can reference back to the preview file that you heard at the beginning of this video, we're definitely missing some of the mix bus juice and the punch, the transient, the things that we expect. So here's easy method to mix bus. It is our old buddy, the God Particle. And if you've been around the channel at all, you know I love this plugin. If you're new here, I love this plugin. I have no affiliation with this plugin at all. But honestly, if I were to have one plugin that I always had to use, Desert Island, on a mix bus, it would be this plugin right here, because it really is meant to do it all, and it can do it all. So if maybe you're new to mixing and you're like, I just want to do one super simple thing on my mix bus, go get this plugin right here and I'll show you a little bit of the nuts and bolts of how it works and what it can do. Or maybe you're a more advanced producer and mixer and you're just looking for some moves to level up what you're already doing on your mix bus. This plugin right here can do a whole bunch of stuff to help you do that. Let's roll a little bit of this mix without God Particle. I'm going to, spoiler alert, mess with the limiter a little bit as we go, because this thing can get loud. It can give your mix a really good loudness. And let's start with it off. Add it in so you can hear what God Particle's doing. Here is With Nothing.
This is just the start. When beauty meets the mystery, I'll take every part. If this is the beginning, this is the beginning. Slow that we follow.
Yeah, so you can hear that's doing a whole bunch of good stuff. If you just scan the plugin, here's kind of how this was originally intended to work. Jason Joshua, the mixer behind this plugin, alongside Cradle, who makes the plugin, basically designed this to where you want to just be hitting the green for the most part. So if you set your input to where this is input metering in the green, adjust the amount, we'll mess with that so you can really hear what that's doing, and then have your low, mid, and high EQ curves. That sort of gives Jason Joshua's ideal EQ curve on a mix. I don't always fall in those exact parameters, and other mixers I know who use this don't always fall in those parameters. Always use your ears first, not your eyes, of course. But for the most part, if you're kind of hitting the green on this plugin, you're going to be in pretty good shape. As for the amount, Jason Joshua tends to be right around 100% here. I tend to be between 100% on the low end and 150 on the high end. Let's run this a little bit in this chorus, and I'm just going to mess with the amount so you can really hear what's going on with that.
This is just the start.
Brings it all forward.
I'll take every part. If this is the beginning, and this is the beginning, flow that we follow.
Yeah, and if you glance at the meter right here, you can see that probably just because of how this is gain structured for this plugin only, not necessarily how it fell in the final mix in the hard advanced method that you'll see coming up here in just a few minutes. We were maybe sort of pinging above where we want to be, but you could really hear what that amount was doing. When you crank the amount, I feel like all the background stuff just goes shoo, like forward right in front of your face through the speakers. Sometimes that's really what you want, and it can be amazing for that. Obviously, this limiter, you heard when we rolled it a minute ago, it's adding tons of loudness. This plugin can be a true one-stop shop. It can get your stuff really nice and forward, in your face, loud, and again, is a great, easy, but still can sound amazing mix bus plugin. There's times where this is the only plugin I'll use on my mix bus, and it just flat out works. Or sometimes this plugin plus one or two other plugins can get me really, really good results. And other mixers, producers I know working here in Nashville and LA at a high level use this plugin because it really does sound great and it's so easy to use. But as you can see from glancing at my Pro Tools session here, the hard method in this video and what ended up being the final mix bus treatment on the final mix of this song had all of these other plugins going on right here. So why would I not just use the God particle? What might I be missing from that caused me to want to go add more plugins? Well, there were a couple things. Number one, as good as God particle is, and it really is so good, it's almost so good that there's nowhere further to push the mix. So you go put this plugin on, it does its thing, but then you can't really push it any further. And so as you're going to see here in the hard part of this video, a lot of the other plugins I added on the mix bus in this song were just intended to push the mix and the mix bus just a little bit further forward, a little bit more clipping, a little bit more color, a little bit more limiting, and let the God particle do its thing as well. So amazing plugin, it does a lot, but there's nowhere further to push it. The other thing I run into with God particle, and this is especially true when I'm mixing productions for other producers, which I do some of, I see a lot of sessions come in that have just God particle doing everything on the mix bus. And, they'll have the amount cranked, they'll have the limiter cranked. Like this thing will be working and like really squeezing the life out of the mix. And as you can hear, it can do so much. But again, because it can do so much, it can almost deceive you into thinking that your mix is a better mix than it is. But over reliance on this plugin, I sometimes feel like doesn't make your mix sound as good as it possibly could with using this plugin plus some of the other tools that I'm about to lay out for you and some of the tools I have in that mix bus cheat sheet. And this is a conversation I've had with some other producer buddies and some producer buddy hang groups I'm in here in Nashville and some mixers working at a really, really high level here in Nashville. When God Particle first came out a year or so ago, however long it was now, everybody flocked to this plugin because it really is so good. But as time's gone on, I think there's a little bit of resurgence away from just slapping this on, letting it be the one-stop shop, and using it in tandem with some of the other plugins I'm about to lay out for you. So let's get into the hard or advanced method of this video, showing you how you can start adding to God Particle using this in tandem with some other stuff to really take your mixes to the next level. So the first thing I did on the mix bus in this song was I actually bypassed the limiter and used another limiter, which was one of my favorite limiters, Ozone Maximizer. This thing's a beast. This thing rules. A lot of the mix dudes in Nashville working at a high level love this thing. Again, one of my favorite limiters. You can see a couple of my other favorite limiters on that mix bus cheat sheet and how I set them up. IRC4 on modern sounds amazing. I find myself using that a lot. I find myself using IRC4 on transient quite a bit. IRC2, all of these sound great. And I think the The character does a thing, the transient and the sustain does a thing to add transient back in after our limiting. There's times where I use just God Particle and it sounds amazing, the limiter and all, but I'm finding more and more that bypassing the God Particle limiter and using a dedicated limiter like this ozone gets me better results. Let's see what that sounds like. So I'm going to go without this ozone limiter, roll with the God Particle limiter, keeping in mind that we have a bunch of plugins given this mix its vibe bypass. So we'll really see it in its final context in a moment. But let me roll God Particle limiter, bypass it, then do ozone maximizer so we can see if it's actually better or if I'm just crazy, which might be the case. Always a chance of that. Let's roll it though.
This is just the start. When beauty meets the mystery, I'll take every part. If this is the beginning, this is the beginning. This road that we follow.
Yeah, I feel like that ozone maximizer does sound a little bit better. I feel like the character and the transient plus that IRC4 algorithm just sounds a little clearer. It gives the mix a little bit more transient, a little bit more clarity. A word that some of my high-level mixer buddies who are smarter than me have been using a lot lately around the God Particle limiter is smushed. And I honestly didn't really hear it at first, but as time goes on and I really shoot out this limiter blind to better, more dedicated limiters, I'm finding that I do sometimes find that to be the case. It can sound a little smushed, and there's more clarity with other limiters, such as the ozone maximizer that we ended up using here. Moving along the rest of the mix bus, if you've been paying attention, you've seen that I had a Slate virtual mix rack. This was just an input trimmer to get my gain structure set up right. So this really wasn't doing anything except lowering the level of everything coming into this by a few dB. First in the chain after that, and we'll leave our ozone and God Particle on since we've kind of been listening through that, was a good old faithful Waves SSL G-Bus comp. I feel like I use a bus compressor like 75-80% of the time. And this is an old classic. I've used about every bus compressor out there. And as time goes on, for some reason, I keep coming back to this one. There's others I love too, but this thing is a super cheap plugin. I actually am working alongside Waves. I used this before I was working alongside Waves on this specific mix. But if you want to go get this plugin, I think it's like $30. Go grab that down in the description below. It would help the channel. If you got your Waves plugins, got this SSL comp through that link. If you want to pick it up, no worries. If not, that's cool. But this thing sounds so good. And I tell you what, the Pensado 1 preset is like the classic SSL G-Bus setting. So this is a modified Pensado 1. I think the Pensado 1 comes on a 2-to-1 ratio. I moved it to a 4-to-1 ratio just to give it a little bit more punch in the case of this song. But let's roll without the G-Bus and then add it in so you can hear what the heck that thing's doing.
This is just the start. When beauty meets the mystery, I'll take every part. If this is the beginning, this is the beginning.
Yeah, just doing its really good SSL G-Bus thing. Love that plugin. Really like what it's doing for mixed bus compression. We'll follow that up with a 1-2 EQ punch. Two EQs kind of acting in tandem to do the same thing. Next is another virtual mix rack. I'm input trimming down just to keep my gain structure in order because of things I'm adding for hype and level later on down the chain. And using this, the Slate Revival, it's free or cheap or comes with a Slate subscription. It's not an expensive plugin. And it's sort of the smiley face thickness shimmer deal. Like, I don't know what frequencies or harmonics it is or isn't adding. Using that in tandem with another smiley face sort of EQ, but EQ that does so much more than just a smiley face thing, is the Acoustica Ruby 2 emulation, the DW Fern VT5. This is a $10,000 piece of outboard gear. The low boost on this is the sound. It is the hack. John Castelli, big mixer in LA, mixed the Billie Eilish thing. He runs all of his stuff through the VT5. A bunch of other high-level dudes in LA use this. My buddy Nathan Dantzler, top mastering engineer here in Nashville. He mastered the whole Sabrina Carpenter record and Lose Control. Teddy Swims. This is a big part of his sound to my knowledge. This thing is a cheat code. It sounds so good, both the hardware and the plugin. Let's roll these two plugins in tandem. And you know what's funny? Actually, the trimmer is not doing anything. So let's delete that. Let's start with both of these plugins off and add them in. And yeah, it's just doing the low boost, high boost. As a result, mid cut, very broadband. Here's what that sounds like.
If this is the beginning, this is the
Low boost, so good.
road that we follow.
Changed a lot when we take it away.
Carry us through every stream and hollow.
Yeah, let's go back to that big section. You really hear some stuff changing when those two go away.
If this is the beginning, this is the beginning. This road that we follow.
Yeah, I mean, this thing adds, in addition to EQ, just such an expensive tube sound. That's why all the dudes at the high level love this thing so much, and they nailed it in the plug-in. But I feel like with the low boost and the high boost, there's just mid-range mud that shows up when I don't have that, and it's like a little bit more low-end oomph and excitement, like rounded bottomness comes up with this, but then a lot of clarity. So love what that's doing right there. Followed again by our buddy God Particle with limiter bypassed and ozone maximizer doing our limiting instead. Followed up with a shout out to my good buddy Doug Weir. Doug is a beast of a mix engineer. I've given him shout outs on the channel before. This K Clip 3 in tape mode, but not actually really clipping, as such an expensive tone thing. And so actually I recently went down the analog summing rabbit hole. Another buddy of mine who's a super high level beast of a producer mixer here in Nashville, Billy Van Alstine. He has a bunch of projects. Check him out. He's a big analog summing guy. And I actually went over to Billy's studio recently to listen to summing because like we're always looking for an advantage, right? I'm always learning, just like all of you, always looking for ways to level up what I'm doing, 1-2% at a time. And at this time, I'm going to stay in the box. But there is something that analog summing and running your stuff through outboard gear can do. And what I love about this plugin is it feels like almost the analog summing sound in the box. It just adds this intangible sort of thing. I'm going to roll this K Clip 3 so you can hear what this is doing. Sounds so good, subtle, but not subtle, expensive, analog sounding thing.
Is the beginning.
Tone.
This is the beginning. This road that we follow. Let it
Yeah, so good. I've been on this thing for the last month or two now since talking to my buddy Doug about this. And yeah, it really is so good. Like I said, I don't really want it to clip. I don't like the sound of the clipping on this that much. There's other tools I use for that, which you can see in the Mixbus cheat sheet. But yeah, gain the input back and the output out. So it's effectively a net zero gain, but you could hear that sounded like gain. It sounded like color. And just listening to my buddy's analog summing setup, like this is giving some of the sound of gear hitting analog summing gear and clipping a converter. Like it's just such a good sound. Cheap plugin, no affiliation with these guys, but just doing such a good thing. And speaking of things in the chain here that I just want to give a little bit more of that analog color, tape color, audio passing through gear, but in the box for ease and efficiency and recall and all of that. Good buddy Mixhead, I have with pretty good authority knowledge that Serban uses this on his mix bus, both the analog gear and now the plug-in. I love following this up after my limiter. And, there's like tape color, but then a little bit of soft clipping too. Like when I go listen to Sabrina Carpenter record, which is obviously huge right now this year, like go listen to the mix of Espresso. And I feel like there's just a soft clip kind of sound on that. I don't know for sure if it's coming from this Mixhead plugin, but I think there's a chance it might be, but it can give you that clipped, like I don't know, just like clipped sound that is kind of in vogue right now. Following this up towards the end of a mix bus chain after a limiter works really, really well for me on this Serban preset. Let's start with it out, then add it in.
If this is the beginning,
So good.
this is the beginning. This road that we follow.
Yeah, really, really been loving this plugin lately. Just adds such an expensive 1-2 punch. You know, let's roll that without the K clip and the mix head, because those are a little bit more of like not necessary more felt than heard sort of plugins. But listen to really what a big difference those make in the mix with both of these guys bypassed.
If this is the beginning, this is the beginning. This road that we follow.
Yeah, doing a lot, as you can hear. And what I love about these tools, you know, we're demonstrating over this optimistic, hopeful kind of whatever vibe this track is that we're demonstrating on. But these tools, like these settings, work on a whole bunch of styles, whole bunch of genres. You can see me talk about these plugins more on other videos I've linked below on this channel. But the stuff just kind of is genre style agnostic within reason. A lot of this stuff will pretty much always kind of work for you. So take the settings, apply them into what you're doing. And, I have an insight meter here on the end, just telling me how loud or not loud I am. We're pretty loud, but loud, hopefully not at the expense of depth, dimension, clarity. I think those things can coexist in today's mixing economy, which is great. But the final thing I did was a little bit of ozone match EQ. Honestly, I don't even remember what my reference track was, but I referenced another song, and then on like 17% mix, just matched a little bit of the EQ of my mix going through all the stuff to my reference track. I've been really into this lately. I've not spent a bunch of time doing this, but Pro Q3 or now Pro Q4, you can do this with. Ozone, you can do it with. It can sound really, really bad if you crank it. In fact, like listen to like full EQ match. It'll jack your crap up pretty bad. Awful. But there's something about a low mix EQ match. It's like almost like a second set of ears of like almost like a mastering engineer like in a plugin to me. Like just giving my mix a little bit of shape. And yeah, it looks like it was Banner Someone to You. I can see as my reference track now. Another song in the style has a really good mix, just like tilting my EQ a little bit this way or that way. Really, really like what that is doing. So that was the full mix bus chain on the song. So I think starting from God Particle, you can see God Particle did a lot. It sounded good, but we got to a place that I think sounds even better. We took God Particle and the great things it was doing and pushed the ball down the field even further. So down here, I actually have a print of the two mixes. This is the God Particle only. And I'll pull up the insight and you'll see they're actually metering about the same. And then this right here was the actual mix with all the mix bus stuff. So you can hear the difference. So here is this and here is this meter. So you can see we're, within a dB or so of each other, I think. And let's roll this God Particle only, and then we'll toggle back and forth between that and the mix with all the stuff on it, the hard mix bus method.
This is just the start. When beauty meets the mystery, I'll take every part. If this is the beginning, it's just this is the
Transient. Even in the verse.
It guides us as we go. We won't miss a moment. This is where we found direction. We will hold it. The story now unfolds. This is the beginning. This is just the start.
Yeah, so hopefully from that you can see that although God Particle is so good, why I added some of the other plugins I did. God Particle sounds great, and again, I've gotten really good results with just that plugin. It really is a great, easy method, but hopefully you can take this video, take one or two of the plugins I threw out, and apply that into your own mix bus workflow. Take these concepts and start applying them into what you're already doing to start making your mixes sound just a little bit better. Hope this video brought you tons of value, and if it did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment down below. Let me know what your favorite part of this video was and what the most helpful tip was. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but I'm just like all you guys watching, sitting here in my studio trying to get 1% better at the art and craft of production, songwriting, and mixing with every single mix. Always looking for an advantage, always looking to learn, always looking to improve in what I'm doing. So we'll see you back here on the channel real soon.